welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship stations, 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Both of our television stations are on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. In addition, on the radio, also, in addition to 89.3 Lakes FM here in the greater West Bloomfield area, we're also on 88.1 WBFH, the BIF, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. We're online, civiccentertv.com. Click on our Watch Live link or view us in that small player at the top right of our homepage, civiccentertv.com. And as always, on Facebook, facebook.com/civiccentertv15 and facebook.com/lakesfm. And as always, joining me here in the studio today is Ronnie Dahl.
Tyler.
Yes.
Having to walk over, I will say.
It's not fun, especially in this humidity. No, it's no fun at all. And I come in, and here I am moving your camera slowly but surely. It's not in a bad spot, but it's not in the right spot. And that's kind of throwing me off. Now you're good.
Huh.
Here we go.
There you go. Now, I think it's easier for guys.
It
is so much easier for you. What, you put some gel in your hair and you're good?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I can speed my process along a lot quicker, I would think, than you can, because you got that walk over here. Then you gotta try to unmelt yourself and then get ready for a show. Yeah, it's not fun, and this is been going on for weeks now too. So
I know.
It's just like, okay, when's it gonna be over? When's it gonna? I know yesterday we had of course the first in-person meeting at Kegel Harbor, in over a year and a half, and we had to set it all up and strike it the night of, or take down the equipment. We call it striking here in the business, and so I went back over there, and one of our other production staff with Motown Digital and Civic Center TV, Charlie, as we come back here, jokingly said, "Yeah, nice parking lot." And my response was, "Yeah, be ashamed if something happened to it."
Yeah. When we still don't have a date.
No, I have no timetable. I have no clue.
So for those that may just be joining us, they're redoing the parking lot here. Mm-hmm. So we're having to park a couple blocks away over at the over near the police department and hike our butts over. And usually there's a few spots at the front here. Like, I've been pretty lucky to snag them most days, but lately, this week, they've all been taken. The thing is like, you do your hair and you do your makeup. And then when you walk over, it's just
you've melted it all off by then, especially in this humidity. It's impossible. Even a 5-minute walk out there in the morning when it's really not that hot, but it's just very, very humid. It's next to impossible to not break a sweat on the way over here on a fairly easy walk.
It'll get done soon. But you're looking nice. You have a tie on today. What you got going on there, Tyler?
Nothing. Just pop the tie on this morning.
Every once in a while, huh?
Here and there, a few times a week. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have everyone with us. I will say it was nice last night. I moved from sleeping next to the dog's crate to the couch.
Very nice.
So hopefully tonight I can actually return to the bed. I noticed, though, because Trixie, she may like my husband better than me. But I'm noticed he's not sleeping down next to the crate.
What gives?
He's like, well, I've got to cover the tour. It starts early in the morning. I'm like, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the bikers are sleeping in some odd places too. Ingratiate yourself in the festivities of the Tour de France, and sleep next to your dog.
Yeah. I will say it was nice though, because anyone that's gone through this with your pet, they can't talk to us. They can't tell us what's wrong, and even the vet was a little worried with Trixie. She called this afternoon and was kind of like, just want to check on her, the vet herself. And you're like, she's like, yeah, even we were a little worried because, she had a few complications and had to do her, opening where they had to cut her open is a little bit longer than what they ever intend to do. So maybe that's why Trixie was so out of it. But she did start to eat yesterday. Of course, they're like, just give her chicken and rice, but boiled chicken.
Right.
No dog wants that.
No. Most humans don't want that.
And I felt bad because she wouldn't eat it. So yesterday I had a meeting in Birmingham, so I stopped by Papa Joe's on my way home and got her vanilla ice cream because they said, we had to get her pills in her.
Okay.
And when you're trying to put your fingers in the mouth of a 70-pound dog.
That's a bad idea.
And she wasn't doing the peanut butter thing, so they're like, try vanilla ice cream. So I stopped to get ice cream, but they also have the little, it's like an extra packaging of like the leftover meat ends and stuff. It's called doggy treats.
Okay.
And hopefully my husband's not listening to this because I lied and said she ate chicken. And so I get that because she wouldn't eat the chicken because there's no flavoring.
Right.
So I got those for her, and she at least she started eating and drinking water yesterday. So you feel a little bit better after that.
Yeah, it's a tough process for them. The recovery for any animal after being spayed or neutered it's not easy, especially those bigger dogs and those bigger animals that tend to be a lot more high maintenance in that situation and tougher to deal with too because of their size.
Yeah. So, but boy, last night, the good thing is that she is starting to walk around a little bit too.
That's good.
And so we're able to get her outside for, just go potty and come back in. The lightning last night was insane. What a show, Mother Nature. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was shortly before the Kegel Harbor meeting yesterday. I happened to be in our back room over here. It was really around, maybe 6:30, 6:45. Just filling up my water bottle, and I'm just back there, and I turned back from the faucet toward the window just to take a look outside because it looked a little gloomy. And as I turn, I just see a big flash out there, and it wasn't close lightning, but it was off in the distance close enough to have a full-on flash. And I was kind of surprised because I wasn't really expecting any sort of inclement weather at all. And but yeah, the lightning last night was wild.
Oh, wow. It does look like we'll continue to get these pop-up storms, but by the end of the week, it's only supposed to be back down into the 70s.
Yeah.
And I have meetings every afternoon, so I can't take out my new paddleboard because it's hard to paddleboard on Cass Lake. On the weekends because of the jet skis. So,
right.
I was like, I'll get off. I'll go do it for, like an hour in the afternoons. And then now I have meetings and and then this weekend it's going to be back in the 70s. It's like, Mother Nature.
Right. What are you doing? Get a grip.
Wow. Hey, anyone, if you live in the city of Pontiac, if you have not been vaccinated just yet, there are going to be more incentives to encourage people to get vaccinated. The Let's Get Pontiac Back to Normal campaign kicks off today. It's going to be taking place in the parking lot of City Hall over there on Woodward Avenue. All participants will receive 2 free tickets to the Unity in the Community concert featuring Lakeside, Midnight Star, and the Stylistics. That concert is going to be happening August 1st. Anyone who gets vaccinated also receives the $50 gift card. Other vaccination clinic dates include July 8th, the 28th, and July 29th. Each clinic is going to be open to the public between 11 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Vaccines are going to be provided by Honor Community Health. Advanced registration through the website is available, but it's not required. At this point in time, you can just stop in, swing in, get a shot in the arm. Typically, they make you wait there for 15 minutes. Make sure you don't have an allergic reaction, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, it's usually a pretty quick process, and we talked extensively yesterday with Dr. Mark Navin from Oakland University about these incentive programs. And do they encourage some people? Sure, but is it a mass number that's really going to be all that effective? Probably not. And in the case of the city of Pontiac, I like what they're doing here with some more interactive incentives. Trying to at least at the very least, if people aren't getting necessarily vaccinated, encourage people to go out and engage in the community a little bit, especially as we're starting to see things open back up and return more to normalcy following the relaxation of restrictions here in the state of Michigan. Getting your communities re-engaged is going to be really important for these local leaders, for these local cities and other municipalities. So that's an element that I do like about this incentive program that's different than others that are just saying, hey, come on out, we're doing a vaccine drive, here's a gift card. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, because we do know Oakland County is doing the gift cards as well. Did you see too, over about 1 million people so far in the state of Michigan have now registered on the My Shot to Win website, the sweepstakes for the state of Michigan, and in just a week.
Yeah.
So I will say, doing this story, I was like, oh, let me register. So I registered my husband and I, and here's the little thing. The fine print, hey, all your information is going to be handed over to Meijer.
Right.
So, of course, Meijer is backing this. I mean, all of our information for these companies is a gold mine.
Right.
So here's going to be the interesting thing, Tyler. We, after we had the scamming incident, we changed our home number. And since then, we've had like no phone calls.
Right.
And now I put that number in here. So we'll see how fast all the, scams and all of that, the warranty calls. I'm calling about your warranty. I'm calling about your education loans. Oh, really? I have no education loans. So we'll see how quick those numbers, those phone calls start coming in, because then we know that you're forced to provide this information, by the way.
Yeah.
So basically you're handing over your information, which, includes where you live, your date of birth, the stuff that they want. And then, so we'll see if they're going to be selling it or not.
Yeah, that's... I went into the website, the My Shot to Win website last week to sign up, and I was just kind of hastily going through the process, and then I got to the, saw what each of the fields were, and got to the end of it. I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go sign up later. I do want to kind of read the fine print, because I know it's going somewhere, but I want to know exactly where it's going, because I tend to be extremely careful with where I throw my personal information out there. But in terms of when and or what capacity we'll be getting spam calls as a result of providing this information to our friends over at Meijer. I would just hope, if we're going to be getting those calls, give me a real person, because
that's not going to happen.
No, it's never going to happen, but I hope for it, because that's their worst nightmare, is dealing with me on the other side of the phone, because I will go into one of many plays, my favorite being the reverse telemarketer call, where you start selling them some useless product that doesn't exist and frankly makes no sense, and try to get them to buy that from you. Like for me, the reverse microwave is one I like to pull on. You pull it, I cooked too many leftovers. I don't want to use all of my Tupperware up. Let me put it in the reverse microwave, and in 5 minutes, it's raw again. Try to sell that to them. Usually doesn't last very long.
Oh, to be the telemarketer on the end of that call.
Yeah,
then they hang up on you.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you like me wasting your time, huh?
And you feel bad because these are just people trying to make money.
Exactly.
It's a paycheck for them. So,
yeah.
Hey, if you're a Costco shopper, those special hours for seniors, they're going to be going away. Costco Wholesale will soon drop its senior hours after holding them for more than 16 months amid the pandemic. The retailer said on its COVID-19 updates page, it plans to end the weekday senior hours and resume regular operating hours starting July 26. Like most of the nation's major grocery stores, Costco started designating the special shopping hours back in March of 2020 to help the most vulnerable and at-risk population from contracting COVID-19. Now, Costco's hour is for members who are 60 and older, members with disabilities, or those who are have an a compromised immune system. The membership club does not allow guests who do not meet its criteria during the designated shopping time, which has become really popular because you don't have the lines that you normally do over at Costco. So last summer, Costco originally announced plans to reduce the special hours to just twice a week in July 2020, but it didn't happen because we saw so many cases spike. But this is another sign we're getting back to normal. I was in Costco last weekend, and another sign, the samples are back. You can munch your way through Costco eating all the various chips and dips and whatever else they have out.
Which is only going to make the lines that much longer. So be aware of that. But, with the place that we're at with COVID-19 vaccinations, the senior population and the immunocompromised population having been prioritized early on, the numbers in those categories tend to be much better than the general numbers in the state of Michigan. So having these special hours in place, while they've been extremely beneficial to these groups, it may not be entirely necessary going forward. And so I think that this is the first of many of these businesses that I think we're going to see start to phase these out or altogether get rid of them here in the coming weeks and next couple of months, especially as we have emerged out of the restrictions phase of this pandemic and as vaccinations continue to move forward. I would hope that they have consulted with the state of Michigan and made sure that the senior population numbers, especially in their local area, maybe store to store, they could keep certain hours in place if there are areas of the state that maybe don't have as great of a population of seniors and immunocompromised individuals having been vaccinated. But I think we'll see this on a company-to-company basis start to be something more common as we return back to a bit of normalcy after the pandemic.
The Costco that we go to over here at Square Lake and Telegraph, they've now added self-checkout.
Okay.
But I will say it's unlike a certain grocery store that's right down the street, which I don't go to that Kroger any longer. Because like yesterday, I had to swing by to get something, and they had no checkouts. Everything was self-checkout.
Yeah.
And I know part of this is they're having trouble getting employees. But Costco seems to manage their self-checkout for the people with just a few things. But there's someone there who helps people, and they'll scan and get them through quickly. So it's not the mess of a backup at some of the grocery stores or like Meijer and the other stores. And I'm always like, too, if I go through the self-checkout, I want a discount.
Sure.
Like, give me 1% off. I'm saving you money.
Right.
Because I'm checking out myself. So I'm not getting, benefits. Shouldn't I get a discount?
Especially if they're limiting, and I think they should. And going forward, hopefully after after this, they take care of this staffing crisis that they're in with these retailers and the grocery stores, that they would. In most cases we've seen in the past, these grocery stores would have those self-checkout lines be limited to a certain number of items. So they're not going to have that potential discount come into play in that case and then have someone come through with a full cart. Because the people that go into a self-checkout with a full cart, they should be relegated to the back of the line. It's terrible.
Another sign that we are on the backside of this pandemic. From now on, the state of Michigan is only going to be publishing the COVID-19 data on Tuesdays and Fridays. So previously, the state published the information Monday through Saturday, but recently began excluding weekends before reducing the updates to now just Tuesdays and Fridays. COVID-19 case rates have been declining in the state of Michigan. Last month, Dr. Caldoun said Michigan is now at the lowest COVID-19 case rate since the pandemic started nearly 15 months ago. So as of July 2nd, more than 9 million vaccine doses have been administered, with about 56.5% of the state's population fully vaccinated. Now, the state's first dose vaccine tracker is going to continue to be updated daily. Again, most restrictions have been dropped, and now the state's not going to update the COVID-19 numbers. And I will say at the end of the day, I never trusted the numbers. I'm like, give us the numbers, science and data. Well, where do those numbers come from? Give me the raw data. Let me go in and add it up myself.
Yeah, and especially because they had to make so many different updates on these numbers, particularly in the death numbers after the fact. So many of these deaths that were reported on one day versus another were taken back from months in the past that they had looked into more and seen that they were COVID-related deaths or declared them COVID-related deaths. And we know that there's been plenty of stories about where they reported COVID-related deaths that may or may not have been truthful. And many reporters, most notably Charlie LaDuff, has been on that and been really taking a hard look at that. But it's as we get further on into this and we have less cases and the case rate goes down and the death rate continues to go down and people keep getting vaccinated, I would expect to see this data. I would expect to have seen this data less often than we had earlier on in the pandemic, because there's not as much of a load on the systems at play that require this information to be as critical as it was during those peak times. That being said, the data has always been very hastily put together, it seems.
Well, just anyone who knows that when you take a deep dive into some of these systems, we know that they don't talk to one another. across agencies. So even though, because you have private, you have health, you have local counties, and all of that information doesn't merge into one program. So then you're having to go in and try to, merge that information, and that can always be problematic. So, and you hope to look at 9/11. One of the things that came out of that was trying to come up with a communication system that, agencies can, correlate and communicate with, because that was a problem with 9/11, that one fire department couldn't maybe speak to the EMS, couldn't speak to the police department. So now we have a merging communication system. So maybe that's something that really needs to be looked at further and designed. I mean, you have all this COVID money. Right. Make it happen. I do know, when I worked with the federal government, they were so far behind on things, and I used to just scratch my head. I'm like, if anything, though, it would always teach you to be creative, because what would take you one step in the private world had to take you 50 steps in the government world. And so many hoops to jump through that they need to hopefully use some of these billions of dollars of our tax dollars to make the system better.
Yeah, we're such a technologically advanced country. We have such great technological minds and different companies that are doing amazing things in this country. There's no reason why the federal government and the state government and these local agencies can't provide a system where they can communicate with each other that, frankly, would only make their operations more efficient and more effective and frankly better at doing their job. So hopefully that's one of those results that comes from this crisis, much like with the last major national crisis following the 9/11 attacks nearly 20 years ago.
With that as a reminder, you can catch the latest headlines. Go to civiccentertv.com, click on coronavirus. There you'll find the latest headlines. But also at the top of the page, we have direct links to the CDC, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, as well as our local communities, so that you can go on and try to find this information for yourself. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. When we come back, I almost said Tuesday, but we're Wednesday. We're already at hump day.
I know. It's all right. We're firing along here, Ron.
And when we come back, we're just talking about, finding solutions to problems. When we come back, we'll be talking with a Ph.D. student. What is she doing to try to bring back a specific fish here in the state of Michigan? So trying to address those problems and make a return to the state of Michigan. Also coming up in the 10 o'clock hour, we'll be speaking with our good friend, Dr. Jamie Taweel. A lot to still talk about, not only about COVID-19, but also so many things. This is summer. A lot of injuries in the summer months. That's all coming up here on the 10 o'clock hour of the Megacast.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Great to have you with us on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. We are here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can find us at Channel 15 Comcast 99 on AT&T. But if you're out driving around, lucky you. Listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. Or if you're stuck in your office, you're back at work, you have a cubicle, go ahead, put us on in the background. We are live streaming the Megacast on our Facebook page, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. This next story really is kind of fascinating to me, Tyler, because we kind of take our environment for granted. But one of the things, hopefully, that came out of COVID-19, as so many of us have been outside enjoying nature so much more, is that we appreciate the land that we live in, especially here in Michigan, because despite the winter months, some of us don't like them being so long. Let's just say that. We are so lucky to live in the area that we are. But there has been one fish that has been missing from our rivers and our streams since, like, I believe the 1900s, like in the early 1900s. So Nicole Watson joining us now on the Megacast. She's a Ph.D. student over at the MSU Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, trying to work on bringing back the Arctic Grayling. With that, Nicole, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I was waiting for Tyler to say go green.
Well,
go white.
Yeah, go green.
Hey, Nicole, this is really kind of fascinating to me because I will say before today, never really thought about this. And we've had the DNR on before, and I know they brought it up. But really looking into the history of why the Arctic Grayling is disappearing from Michigan. Give us a little bit of history on this fish.
Sure. So Arctic Grayling was our predominant stream salmonid that we had in the Lower Peninsula. So specifically the northern Lower Peninsula. So if you look at your Michigan map, anything north of your knuckles was Arctic Grayling habitat. There were very few, if not any, brook trout that were in the Lower Peninsula in late 1800s-ish time. And brown trout were also not present at the time. So a lot of people think that the trout population or salmonid population that we have right now may be what we've always had. And there's Pacific salmonids and brown trout that were introduced to the region. And then other environmental impacts that also occurred in the mid to late 1800s. So you had competition from these other non-native species, but you also had habitat destruction through the ways that logging practices were done at the time, and also overfishing. So overharvest of Arctic Grayling, the environmental destruction, and competition all led to the extirpation of Arctic Grayling from the state of Michigan in the Lower Peninsula in approximately 1906 to 1908, and completely from the state in 1936. So so it was considered a localized extinction, so an extirpation. And we've tried to bring them back in the past, and we've had some complications, but there's new technologies out that are really giving us a lot of hope that we can bring them back again.
So the Arctic Grayling, I was reading on the DNR website, it was only native to Michigan and Montana. Did Montana experience the same problems that we did?
So they started to see declines in their Arctic Grayling population later in the 1900s. So they were a little more remote and less accessible. So they didn't have as many of the impacts that we did in Michigan on their population. They are also in northern Arctic regions in North America as well. So there's populations in Alaska, Northwest Territories in Canada, and other regions in Canada as well, and some isolated populations in, I believe, Asia as well.
So this problem really is human-made. We created this issue.
Yeah, definitely. So, we've learned so much since, and now it's really time to try and bring these fish back again.
So why is that important?
There's a huge heritage with this fish in Michigan. So if you think about it, if you're familiar with Grayling, Michigan, if you drive north, you may just drive right past it. Otherwise, it's a popular stop for a lot of folks that are traveling. And Grayling, Michigan was actually named after the fish, the Arctic Grayling. And, it's pretty tragic that we no longer have it here. And plus, a lot of indigenous peoples also have strong connections to Arctic Grayling throughout their history as well. So to be able to bring back this fish has really good value.
So how do you go about that? I know that you mentioned it's been tried in the past without success. Why do you think this is going to be different?
Yeah, so we're really doing a lot of research, and that's where my PhD work comes in at Michigan State. So through my research, my goal is to determine the time at which these fish, first of all, are imprinting to the streams, and if they select a familiar water type. And that answers one of the complications that occurred in the past, that the fish would be reintroduced into the streams and you would have rapid outmigration out of the streams. You would raise them in a hatchery, then you would introduce them to the stream, and before you know it, they would disappear. So by determining when these fish are actively imprinting to that water, and seeing when they're choosing familiar water sources, that'll help negate that issue. And then I also aim to determine predation rates between young brook and brown trout on juvenile, so grayling fry, so the very early life stage. And I'm also aiming to determine the pressures of competition and that impact of competition between young brook trout and grayling, and then also brown trout and Arctic grayling as well. So all at the age 0 life history. And that'll help us determine where these fish can fit in. And before that, this research hadn't been done, so we were really unsure of those complex interactions between the species.
So it was really one of those things that let's put them in and pray that they are able to survive, and it didn't happen. So now you're taking a step back and trying to, be more selective in how you go about it. Nicole, if I can ask you, you said imprinting. Can you explain to us a little bit more what that means?
Sure. So imprinting, if you're familiar with Pacific salmonids, Chinook, coho, steelhead, things like that, a lot of those fish will, they rear in the stream. So they incubate, spawn in the stream, and then they migrate out to the ocean or to the Great Lakes for that matter. And as an adult, they will come back to that location that they were hatched. And so that would be a good example of imprinting. So a lot of it is taking that scent of the water. So fish have a very sensitive sense of smell, more than the most sensitive dog for smell wise. So they can pick up minute chemical compositions in the water, and they can use that to imprint. And so they put it pretty much in their memory, and they store it away until they're going to need to return to that location. So they don't just hatch and stay in one spot. They're going to hatch and they'll migrate around, but they will typically stay in that familiar watershed. So learning if they're imprinting, say, as early as the eye to egg stage, which literally for a fish is a fish egg with 2 eyes. So the eye to egg stage could be as early as imprinting occurs, but it can also occur at various other life stages as well. So when they hatch, when they come out of the substrate, and any other physiological changes that are occurring could also be triggering imprinting. So I'm looking to determine what those timings are for those Arctic grayling.
Nicole Watson with us here on the Megacast. She's a Ph.D. student over at the Michigan State University Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. She is working with the Michigan DNR on the Arctic Grayling initiative. And Nicole, if I can ask you, where does your research stand right now? What's the next step?
So right now I'm in my last laboratory season, and I'm transitioning into building a individual-based population model for the fish as well. So I'm going to incorporate the data that I've collected in the lab and apply it into a computer model that can be used to determine the overall impacts. It will help us determine the total number of eggs that we'll need to reintroduce, which will help Michigan DNR in that effort. And I will be analyzing and writing up my data here shortly. And it really coincides well with the Arctic Grayling initiative with Michigan DNR. So I'll have all my data ready before we're ready to put fish into the streams. So earlier this year in May, I traveled to Alaska and brought back the next broodstock cohort. So a broodstock is going to mature into the adult fish that the state collects the eggs and milk from to introduce into the streams. So we'll go ahead and put those fish in once the broodstock had matured. We'll collect that eggs and milk. We're still about probably 4-ish years off from actually putting fish eggs in the water right now into Michigan streams. But yeah, it's really coincided with my research occurring first, before the state of Michigan is ready to select specific streams for reintroduction.
How long have you been working on this project?
Since 2018, I've been attending meetings for the Arctic Grayling Initiative since its inception in 2016, and then just worked on obtaining funding for my research between then, 2016, and when I started in 2018. So yeah, it's been a long process, but it's definitely, Arctic grayling are an amazing species, and to be able to have an impact and help bring them back to the state is very impactful.
For some of us, we're like, wow, that's a lot of effort to bring a one fish back to the state of Michigan. How did you get interested in the Arctic grayling and this project?
Yes, I always used to vacation in Grayling. I now actually have a seasonal cabin up there. My husband and I fly fish. We hunt quite a bit. So I just started to learn more of the story by visiting Grayling quite a bit and seeing all of these old mounted Arctic grayling here and there. And the more you learn about their history, the more you realize that you really want to make a difference and help bring this fish back. So I just really started doing research. Even before I started working on my master's, I was already looking into what I wanted to focus on for my Ph.D., which was to really get to the bottom of what was preventing Arctic grayling from being able to reestablish populations in the state. And yeah, it just so happened it was perfect timing for the Grayling Initiative to kick up and me to start my Ph.D.
Did COVID-19 and the pandemic sideline your research at all, or did it help speed it along because you had more time?
I was supposed to be doing laboratory research in 2020, and with the COVID-19 pandemic, I was unable to travel to Alaska to collect eggs. So I had to take a step back for that year, but it did allow me time to revamp the protocol, see if I had any gaps that I needed to fulfill this year in the research collection. And it was a lot of good reorganization and prep. So it was unfortunate that it happened, but it was put to good use for sure.
Well, that's good to know. And maybe you learned something during that time that's going to help make this project successful.
Yeah, definitely. I was able to do even more background research than I typically do. And yeah, just get that refocusing on everything that we needed to have done to start up the lab again this year. Because we do a full shutdown at the end of every season for the laboratory research, and then we reopen each year. So it was good to get everything back open this year and get back into the lab.
We're talking with Nicole Watson. She's a Ph.D. student over at the Michigan State University Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. And Nicole, when you were going out and seeking funding, how hard is it for you to convince people that this is worth the money, we need the money, at a time when we have so many other things going on in the world?
Yeah, it took a while. So the Michigan Arctic Grayling Initiative, to begin with, is a really grassroots crowdfunded type of project. And it's also pretty costly. I mean, we had to, Michigan DNR needed to revamp the Odin State Fish Hatchery to have an isolation unit put in. And then also my research needing to get funded as well, plus additional projects. So, we were really able to start a big collaboration. So there's over 55 organizations and individuals that are all part of the Michigan Arctic Grayling Initiative to begin with. And so a lot of it was just trying to talk to the right people, and really just stressing the importance of bringing this fish back, and knowing that, Montana saw success in reestablishing their grayling population after declines, and learning from Montana, learning from what we've done in the past, and just showing that, yes, we do think that this is possible and we can do it again. And just to know that people have had a part in bringing this iconic fish back. I mean, Arctic grayling looks nothing like any of the salmonids that we currently have in the state of Michigan. And it's unfortunate that it was lost to begin with. So being able to correct that is really, it's a pivotal moment. And just getting additional people to realize that and to help is a great thing to do.
And with that, if I can ask you, in your research, were you able to at least try to find out why it was native to Michigan to begin with?
So one of the main reasons that you had two glacial relic populations is just the way that the glaciers actually retreated historically. So that's why you had those relic populations in Montana and in Michigan. Those were the two populations that were there. And then the rest in like northern Canada and Alaska is still established as well.
Nicole Watson with us here on the Megacast. She's a Ph.D. student for the Michigan State University Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. She is also working with the Michigan DNR on the Arctic Grayling initiative. And with that, Nicole, it's been a fascinating conversation. I've learned so much. Is there anything that maybe I didn't ask, since you are the expert, that you want to share?
Yeah, so just to share a little bit of the preliminary results of the research, what we're finding is Arctic grayling and brook trout do coexist quite well together. And so that is really giving the reintroduction initiative a lot of hope that the reintroduction will indeed be successful. In the lab, brown trout do stress the Arctic grayling and limit their growth overall, but seeing that success and the positive growth in the grayling in the presence of brook trout has really been a good thing to see, and is, like I said, really giving us hope for the reintroduction.
Well, we wish you the best of luck on the remainder of your research, and we hope to see this come to fruition, but you're saying it's probably, 4 years off?
Yeah, so we have to wait until the cohort completely sexually matures. So the fish that came back this year, 2021, will mature in approximately 3 to 4 years. Once those fish are mature, we're able to cross the brood stocks that we have to obtain the eggs and milt. So once, like I said, once they're mature, we'll be able to start putting fish in the water.
Well, best of luck to you, and thank you for your dedication to this issue.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Nicole Watson, again, she's a Ph.D. student at MSU's Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. With that, we'll take a quick break here on the Megacast. When we come back, we'll be joined by our good friend, Dr. Jamie Taweel. That's next here on the Megacast.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Thank you for being with us on the Megacast. Tyler, so every day when I bring in my water now, when I try not to forget it, my garden out back, I have this little herb garden. That seems to be the only thing the deer are not eating. I looked out this morning, my one plant, all the flowers are gone. Every single last one. But today, so I mix it up. Sometimes I put mint with berries. Today I put mint, lime, and cucumber. Not a good combination.
Oh no, you gotta experiment a little bit here and there, but I don't know about that. That's the cucumber part's what kind of throws me off there. That might mess with the other two. But
I think it did, and you can't take it out because now the water tastes like that.
Yeah, once you're in, it's too far gone.
Well, you know what? We hope is going to be gone soon. COVID-19.
Yes.
or at least to the point, COVID-19 is probably not going anywhere. But at least, hopefully, we don't have to be locked down. Dr. Jamie Taweel with us here on the Megacast. He's the internal medicine specialist over at the Grand River Medical Association. Now, COVID's not leaving us, right? I mean, we'll still have it around.
COVID's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be around, variants, all the fun stuff. We're going to be dealing with it. I'm going to be talking about it for a long time.
It's just so, you know what, they should make a list of words like when we come out of the pandemic that you can never repeat again. COVID, crisis, pivot.
Oh yeah. This dominates the conversation. It's all we talk about for long periods of time, and it will continue to be that way, unfortunately. But the good news is it's getting a little bit better. I think the rates are going down, and I think everything's starting to move in a better direction, but it will not be completely zero.
So, and how do we get there? Would it require everyone being vaccinated, or are we always going to have some variants out there?
There's always going to be some variants that develop over time, and that's kind of how it works with the flu. I think once we achieve herd immunity, that things will be a lot better and the world can go back to the way it was. There will always be considerations and issues that are going to be, things that pop up every year. I mean, there were things that really got to us before COVID, there was bird flu, SARS, all other fun stuff. But the good news is that once we achieve herd immunity, that it'll be something that we can kind of get on top of rather than something that gets on top of us.
And we should remember, too, we don't talk about it a lot, but and I know that COVID is not the flu. However, that seems to be something that people can kind of wrap their mind around. People die from the flu every year as well, thousands of people. And so we have to remember, even though we're in the middle of the pandemic, hopefully coming out of the pandemic, it will still be with us. And some people are going to probably sadly continue to die from it. However, we don't have to wear our mask everywhere. And, my hand sanitizer supply is actually running low right now.
Yeah, I think everybody has adopted a lot better ways of dealing with things. They're washing their hands. They're being more aware of these things. And some people are wearing masks still, even if they've been vaccinated and don't need to, which is also a very warm welcome to a physician. But at the same time, there's always going to be risks, and the flu will always be there, and other illnesses will be there. And, we will continue on as we always have. We're doing well, and we will continue to.
I will say, though, I've started to notice, not just in myself, but some of my friends, but when you go to the grocery store or the stores, it used to be as soon as you walked in, everyone was, dipping their hand in the hand sanitizer that was in every store, wiping their hands, grabbing the wipes, the gloves that we knew were just contaminated gloves. But you're not seeing that as often. And I've noticed now some of the stores, a lot of times their hand sanitizer dispenser is empty. So are we starting to forget about these rules in the beginning? Because, back in the beginning, it was like cooties everywhere. It was kind of freaking your mind out. But now we're just like, we're becoming too relaxed, I think.
Yeah, and that's been happening. I see that. Look, the fatigue of COVID has just overwhelmed everybody. And I think people are just ready to get back to a normal life. And but I am seeing that people are just so anxious to get back to a normal life. It's kind of like when COVID first hit, people that had COVID and did well with it, we're walking around invincible going, I already had COVID, I don't have to worry about this. And then all of a sudden we kind of hit that second wave where everybody got their vaccines and we're immediately like, all right, I think I'm going to be okay. And then the CDC said, if you've been vaccinated, that a mask is not entirely necessary. And now everybody's just kind of forgetting about everything and going back to baseline. People are still being cautious, but it is getting much more lax out there. And I don't know. We're going to have to just address these things as we see fit.
So as we continue through the summer, the focus, of course, right now on the Delta variant. And I know health officials are still warning people and trying to encourage people to get vaccinated, because we have to remember kids under the age of 12 cannot get vaccinated. So how concerned should we be with the Delta variant, and could it force us to go back into restrictions like we've seen in other countries?
I'm not quite sure. I don't know yet if it's going to force us specifically to go back into, quarantine and shut down like it was. I don't think that's going to happen. the Delta variant is a not so gentle reminder that COVID is not going away. What happens is COVID, the Delta variant, you have to look at in terms of variants or new new variants of COVID. Are they going to be more transmissible, and are they going to be more dangerous? So is it easier to catch? And if you catch it, is it going to be more dangerous than what you were getting previously with previous variants of COVID? Delta variant is shown to be a lot more transmissible, which is a little bit more concerning, so much more easily spread. And it does have an increase in hospitalization rates. I'm not quite sure on the death rates, but it does have an increase in hospitalizations. I am seeing some patients that are going to the hospital. I don't know specifically if those are the Delta variants or not, so it's hard to tell. The vaccine, however...
Can I ask you too, how do they know if you have the Delta variant? Because it doesn't show up in a regular test, right?
No, so it's very specific lab testing, and I think they may have a rapid test that will test specifically for the Delta variant, but I'm not quite sure if that's out yet. But the other thing is, we do know the vaccine does work against the Delta variant. It is a little bit less effective, but it is still effective. So getting the vaccine will help. And if you get enough people that are resistant to the Delta variant due to the vaccine, that will really lower that risk of transmission. It'll make that transmissibility a lot less. People will be safer. It's also worth noting that there's a little bit more resistant to monoclonal antibody treatment. So if you do get hit with the Delta variant, you may not be, not only that, treatment may not be as effective.
So with that, does it matter which vaccine you had when it comes to protecting against some of the variants?
I haven't looked at specific head-to-head studies against the specific variants, but I do believe that in the readings that I did with regards to the Delta variant, the vaccine wasn't effective, and I believe it was all three. Again, a little bit less effective, not by a significant amount, but a little bit less effective, but still does help and is still protective. So I am going to encourage anyone to get whatever vaccine they're able to get their hands on.
And right now it's easy, and not only easy, but all you have to do is go online and pick and choose, because you can get a donut, you can get a beer, now you can get a $50 gift card and register to win $1 million, maybe $2 million.
I know, right? You get a toaster.
Right? Maybe you should wait a little bit longer. Tigers tickets? They didn't have many takers on that one. So what do you think about these incentives?
Anything that's going to encourage healthy behavior. I mean, when we were kids and we went to the pediatrician, we were getting a lollipop after our shots, and that got us through it. So if we have to give them a lollipop in the shape of a beer or a donut, help yourself. I just want healthy behavior, even if we're using unhealthy bait. I just want people to, I want the world to open back up again. And this is the quickest, clearest path to that, and the least amount of casualties.
So as a doctor, are you concerned though, because now we have pretty much very few restrictions as a community over the whole, which makes it less likely for the people who have not been vaccinated by now. I don't think some of these incentives are really going to put them over the edge. So is it concerning for you as a doctor that we still have so many people who've chosen not to get the vaccine, especially when we're looking at some of our, communities such as like a Pontiac or a Flint? And, Flint, you kind of understand, because why should you trust the government? Look what they did to your water. So it's hard for people to trust the government.
Well, I'm not necessarily asking them to trust the government. I'm asking them to trust the medical profession, the medical professionals who have done the research and have done the work and have dedicated their lives to really determining whether or not this has been a safe or effective treatment and what they can do. And the government is not really the ones, they're obviously pushing it for the better of the economy and the people and all of that, and I understand that, but they're really more or less the Uber driver delivering the food, or the Grubhub driver delivering the food to your house. Like, I just want people to get the vaccine as a medical professional, looking at the studies that I have looked at. So, I do understand that. Now, am I concerned because people view that as something and are not getting vaccinated? To answer your question, yeah, I am. I'm relieved that enough people that have received the vaccine have done so to a degree where I think we are still able to open up with a lot less problems, deaths, etc. However, I mean, it would be ideal if everyone could get it, but I also respect everyone's opinion to make a decision as a human being. I'm not going to force anyone to do something they don't want to do. I wouldn't want anyone to force me to do something I don't want to do. My only job is to educate. And if you take my educating, what I say as something to consider, and you follow my advice, that's great. If you don't, I understand. I don't take it personal, and I don't think medical professionals or anyone for that matter should either. Everyone's allowed to make their own decisions.
Are you able to administer the shot yet in your office?
So to the best of my knowledge, no. And that's because it's still under emergency FDA approval, it has to be through a government-driven type of thing. And I, as a private practice, can't do that. So in other words, if I was with a hospital that had signed a contract with, for distribution, then yes. Or if I was with a pharmacy that signed it, but I'm an independent, I'm sure I could apply for it, but I just have not gotten to that. There's too much going on.
Yeah, I think that might be one of those hurdles for so many patients because they like their doctors, they trust their doctors. And if I had, Dr. Taweel giving it to me and I've been seeing you for 10 plus years, I would maybe feel more comfortable. So hopefully that's going to be the last hurdle to get more people vaccinated. Dr. Jamie Taweel with us here on the Megacast, internal medicine specialist for Grand River Medical Associates. And doctor, if I can ask you, of course, we had the tragedy over the weekend involving the hockey player at the incident in Novi with the fireworks. And we talk about this every single year. And every single year we have these tragedies. And we know, I will tell you, last night it was like fireworks central in our neighborhood. Yet again, I know they're supposed to end on the 4th, but we know they don't end on the 4th, especially for all of us that live over in the Lakes region. So
everyone with dogs.
I know. Thank God my dog is so drugged up right now. She just got spayed, so she's knocked out. She doesn't care. She's like, whatever you want, just give me chicken. But with that too, I think people are like, how could he die from these injuries?
Yeah. So I think that if I remember correctly, they thought he initially died from a head injury trying to get out of a hot tub. Then they determined that he died from blunt force trauma to the chest. Now, I don't know the type of firework that they were dealing with, but when they talk about a mortar, it's one of those giant firecrackers that requires a significant amount of propulsion to take this giant, heavy bag full of gunpowder sand and launch it hundreds of feet into the air. So if you're going to take a hit like that to the chest, and my heart condolences goes out to the family, that's tragedy. What's going to happen is it's going to hit that chest, and your heart is right there and your lungs are right there. But you also have to consider all of the connections to your heart and lungs are there. The great vessels that lead all of your blood from the lungs to the heart and from the heart, the aorta, all of that. And that's like getting in a car accident and basically hitting that steering wheel. It can cause any of those major vessels to rupture. And once that happens, internal bleeding into the chest, and it causes significant problems. Taking that out of the way, if you take a blast like that to the chest, the lungs get injured, and just like any other part of you that gets injured, they swell up, they get inflamed, they fill with fluid, like a bump on the head, but have that happening on the inside around the heart or the lungs can cause problems even further down the road. So it's a tough pill to swallow that had to happen like that, and that is terrible. But from the medical perspective, it's understandable, like a very heavy blast that basically resonates through the chest cavity where all those important structures and connections are there and all those blood vessels. It can be pretty dramatic.
From a medical side of things, what are your thoughts and feelings on them selling these powerful fireworks? Because I believe Michigan a few years ago lifted some of the restrictions, and the more powerful ones that used to be sold over the border were now allowed to be sold here in the state of Michigan. I think there's a fee that helps support some of the fire departments. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of firefighters who they're just like, why? You should not put these in the hands of regular people, especially people who have probably been drinking all day.
I mean, if the fees for the firecrackers go towards the fire department, that's like, I don't know, ordering pizzas and the money goes towards nutritionists. Like, right. It's creating a problem that's requiring the need of the other person. But, I think anything under supervision is going to be necessary. Hopefully these lessons that we keep seeing are, hopefully that death does not go in vain. I'm sure there's a lot of awareness to that. Here we are talking about it. So the problem is with the 4th of July, it only comes around once a year, and the collective attention span of people tends to forget these things the following year, and everyone makes the same mistakes over and over, and we're not learning these lessons from our past. I think, again, it's dangerous. You're playing with fire, literally and figuratively. And I think that needs to be, especially on these holidays where alcohol, unfortunately, is involved. So I think certain fireworks should be left to professionals, or at least to people that are a little bit more apt to handle this. But at the same time, it seems that this accident specifically was a complete freak tragedy. So it's hard to sit there and say, well, let's ban all firecrackers due to the, it
Right.
becomes, it's a tough sell. I don't know how to, I just wish people would be more careful.
I am surprised though. We grew up with sparklers, and we had them out over there. And you're like, wow, these things are really allowed, because what do? The first thing, it's not one. You've got to put like 4 or 5 together so that you could twirl them and make the little designs and stuff. Who thought this was smart, right?
I'm sorry?
Who thought that was smart?
No, not at all. That was like an early branding tool. So there's inherent dangers in everything, and there's always going to be, these tragic accidents, and it's unfortunate. And so I'm quite convinced that this was certainly unintentional, nor was it negligence. I think it was, I don't know the exact details, so it doesn't seem like it was anything significant or severe in terms of negligence. I don't think this was anyone's fault other than a freak accident. I don't know for sure, but that's a pretty significant, dangerous thing.
Right, and we always remind people of the dangers every year. With that, Dr. Taweel, what else are you seeing right now this time of year? Anything else out there we should be warned about?
Summertime, you know what I'm seeing a lot of? I'm seeing a lot of people that are injuring themselves because they've been sedentary for the last year due to COVID, and then they're getting out there and they're doing too much too fast, and they're creating a lot of musculoskeletal injuries that they weren't ready for. Some people gained a little bit of weight, myself included, and they're pushing themselves a little bit harder than they were previously, and this has been creating a little bit of a mess. So I just want people to ease themselves back into things a little bit more if possible. Other than that, just typical allergies and sinus congestion, a lot of those fun things those allergy problems lead to sinus issues, et cetera, et cetera.
So can I ask you too, before we say goodbye, the humidity has been insane over the past week or two, and for people trying to exercise in the humidity, is there a higher risk factor with that?
Well, people that are asthmatics can start to have a little bit more problems with asthma with regards to the humidity. So I'm always going to ask them to be cautious with regards to how much they can exert themselves. Make sure you have your inhaler. Humidity can make it a little bit tough for people with respiratory problems. So I do want them to be cautious. Try to work out in a cooled environment if possible. But it should be okay for the rest of people. Humidity can also make things a little bit hotter than it is. Your ability to sweat and cool yourself down does get hindered by how higher the humidity can be. So be cautious, or at least make sure there's a breeze going so that all that perspiration is actually doing something, that the evaporative effect that is cooling you is actually happening. So.
Dr. Jamie Taweel with us on the Megacast, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates. It's great, as always, having you with us, Doctor. We appreciate your time.
So much. Let me just real quick tag onto that humidity comment. Please stay hydrated. Make sure you're drinking as much as possible. You lose a lot more water than you do otherwise. So make sure you're drinking a significant amount of water if you're going to be working out. Thank you so much for having me.
It's always great having you. And I will say, just maybe not add the cucumber to your water with the lime and the mint.
No cucumbers.
I'm trying a new recipe so I drink more water, Doctor.
You know what? I don't care how you do it, as long as you're doing it. Just drink a lot more water. If you have to add 3 cucumbers, please do.
Well, thank you again for being with us. We'll take a quick break here on the Megacast. When we come back, Pastor Gracey will be with us here on the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid. Can I ask you a question? Why did you get vaccinated?
I'd like to go to these school dances and spring break to have fun.
I want to be in person for college next semester.
I want to get out of this pandemic.
I wanted to protect the people around me.
Why did you get vaccinated?
Because I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my friends,
I just want to go to a show, dance around, not have to worry about anything, feel like I'm free again.
So we can not miss out on the best years of our life.
How does marijuana affect the teen brain?
Our brains are still developing into our 20s.
With regular use, marijuana can affect teen brain development.
It can affect our brain's circuitry and blood flow and impair thinking, learning, and memory function,
which could hold us back from reaching our potential.
Don't let marijuana mess with your brain.
Get the facts at michigan.gov/drug-free.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us on the Megacast. The station ID, I'm a little bit late. 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. My clock is off.
That's okay. We're within the 5-minute window, so it's okay. It's all good.
There you go. You can always catch us on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Also, if you have cable, Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T. As we were talking about at the top of the show, there's a new initiative right now to try to encourage more and more people in the city of Pontiac to get vaccinated. And I know back in the beginning of this pandemic, gosh, it seems so long ago when the issue was just trying to get people tested, right? The Shiloh Baptist Church in Pontiac, they were one of the testing spots. They've been such a great partner with the county, but also the community in trying to get us all healthy and back on track. But they also were such an advocate also for the kids and a lifeline to so many of the kids throughout this time who maybe didn't have internet for them to be able to, get online and do their homework. So let's bring in Pastor Coley Gracey again. It's always great having you with us. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
We are doing better. Does this summer feel different to you than last summer?
This summer is way different. It's a good different, but it's way different.
I know. It's almost like it's lighter, right?
It is.
So with that too, Pastor, can I ask you, because we do know that in the city of Pontiac, people are still struggling. There is still need there. And COVID-19 in this crisis has really highlighted the problems that have always been there. Do you think some of those issues are going to finally be addressed now?
I think the spotlight has been shed on problems. Am I optimistic about how they'll be handled? Not necessarily. But I do think that nobody can deny that the need is there. So I think that's the first step that we're dealing with.
So as the pastor there, you have been on the front lines really throughout this pandemic. How are the members of your congregation doing?
My members are doing well. We had a great community event probably about a month ago. I was able to partner with another Pontiac person, Roland Coit, who's the owner of Burn Rubber Sneaker Boutique. Also partnered with Shakita Jones, who is the runner of a nonprofit organization called Kicks for Kids. We were able to kind of collaborate together. We came up with over 500 pair of new and gently used shoes, and we were able to do a completely free shoe giveaway in the community. So we're still able to stay busy while we're in this pandemic, and we're still able to meet needs, but there's always work that needs to be done.
And with that, so were these events in person?
I'm sorry?
Were you able to meet in person?
Absolutely.
Isn't that, it's like just to see people again, like to talk to them and meet new people.
Yeah, it was amazing. We were able to do most of it outdoors. So all of the organization and everything was outdoors. The shoes were indoors, so we let them in groups of like 10 to come shop, get their stuff, and get back outside. But we were able to have a good time. They brought out like ice cream trucks and food vendors, and it was a big party in the parking lot. It was just good to see people.
So, Pastor, are you doing services in person still, or are you still streaming?
No, we're doing both now. We're back in person. I started back in person Easter Sunday. So that was our first in person. and we've been going live ever since. But we're also realizing that we got a pretty big following online. So we couldn't just cut them off and say, hey, Jesus is back inside. So we're still doing our due diligence, and we still have online services also.
And do you think that's something that is going to stick around from here on out?
I hope so. In my opinion, I think we've reached people that we probably would have never reached, people that weren't comfortable coming into the church, people that feel like they won't fit in, we were reaching people that we were supposed to be reaching in the first place. So I hope that I know for sure for Shiloh, since I'm the pastor, we'll continue to do it, but I really hope that there's a push to try to reach people where they are. This pandemic taught us a lot. It taught us a lot.
And with that, though, too, do you think because of the COVID-19 and the crisis, did it help bolster faith, or did it do the opposite? Because I think I saw one study that was saying that 47% of Americans said they belong to a church, or a synagogue, or a mosque, and that was down from 50%. Yeah. And is it maybe people aren't identifying with one organized religious entity, and they're seeking things out online?
I think a couple of things happened. I think for people that had faith, it tested their faith. And for some people, they were, being outside, especially in the Baptist tradition, the church is a sacred place. That's just where you go. Same with every other religious sect. But when you're not able to go to the church, does it mean that your faith died? So we had a couple of older members that were really concerned because they've been through church through everything. Jim Crow, we went to church. When we marched, we went to church. When we was through the crack epidemic, we went to church. Now that we're dealing with this situation, and I told them literally, I said, look, you're the demographic that are going to be hurt the most. It's not that I don't want you in church, but I think it's necessary, if we're going to see you after, that we don't do it now. So dealing with that, I think it tested a lot of people's faith to see if they believed what they said they believed. And secondly, I think it also caused those that weren't necessarily spiritual to find something, because you start to realize real quick when crisis hits, if I'm not in control, somebody is. So let me figure out who I can link up with, who I can get around to figure out how I can get through this.
Has it changed, the pandemic, has it changed how you try to reach members of the community?
Absolutely. I get on my church. I'm a little radical at times, but I get on my church all the time. I said, look, our evangelism is not going to be putting on matching T-shirts and going door to door and knocking. That's it. One, it does a disservice to your people, but two, it just shows you how out of touch you are. So really what we can do, the only thing that we can do as a church, as a community, is show that we care. So that's why you see us we'll put on events. I have a couple of events coming up in August because that's our anniversary month, but we're trying to be as visual as possible and meet as many needs as possible. That way people will connect Christ to whatever situation they're going to, and they'll naturally come in instead of us going out and knocking on doors and saying, hey, I know you got problems, come on to church. It just doesn't work anymore.
One of the things I remember, going to disaster zones, like after a hurricane or after, devastating fires, typically it's members of the church community that is first there to respond. They're some of the ones that are on the scene the quickest and the fastest and reaching out and helping. The church is more than the building. It's about the community. Absolutely. But how do you, because one thing with COVID, we've come to realize we all impact one another. And we see that when we go to the grocery store and you're looking at the next person. So how has that worked and that message worked from your standpoint as a pastor?
That's actually our biggest weapon that we have. Like I said, until people know how much you care, they don't care how much you know. So when we're out in the community, I told them that, look, the church isn't closed because the church is not a building. We're the church. So we have to make sure that people know that the love of Christ is still alive. So everywhere you go, I understand people are short on patience. I understand they can get snippy, but you have to be different. Everybody else is frowning. You have to smile. Everybody else is pessimistic. You have to be optimistic. You have to bring the light into the room. And that's all that we can do as children of God. That's our calling, and that's what we're supposed to do.
How do you try to attract new members?
That's getting tricky. The truth is, when we went to a more virtual standpoint, everybody ended up being on the same playing field. So I'm a smaller church. There are larger churches in the city, but by production, you can't tell who has 800 members and who has 8 members. So the only thing that I could do was try to give them a message of hope, make sure that it was biblically sound, and we're growing just based off of our online membership. Now, the trick is, how do you get online numbers to calculate into in-person numbers? So that's what we're working on right now.
And, we should note as well, so many churches, you're relying on your congregation for donations and keeping the doors open. And that can be tricky if they're not actually coming into the building and having that connection, not only with you as the pastor, but the person beside them.
Absolutely. And it does get tricky. We're in the process of attempting to pay off our mortgage right now. And I'm making a hard plea for it. I said, look, if we can just hone in and get everything done, if we pay off our mortgage, it will give us so much more opportunity to make an impact in the community that we so badly want to make an impact in. So trying to get people to give when you don't see them is very tricky. And like I said, you get into a habit. You come into the church, you usually bring money with you. When you're at home, and we like to call it bedside Baptist, when you're at bedside Baptist, and you can roll over and look at me, and you can close me before you can get to the plea for giving, it's super hard to get donations.
And so with that, though, there are so many online platforms for people to donate. Has that worked for you in any way?
It has. We use, it's a platform called Givelify. And you can search Shiloh by name. You'll see our logo there, and you can give directly through Givelify. It comes directly to us. That's what we've used. I know a couple of other churches, they were using Zelle. They were using a couple of different options, but Givelify seemed to be the safest. And with Givelify, when you give, they send you documentation of what you gave at the end of the year so that you can write it off on taxes. You don't have to wait on anything. So it works out best.
Yeah, and that's important. Again, we're joined by Pastor Gracey from the Shiloh Baptist Church in Pontiac, and you were such a lifeline for so many kids in the middle of this pandemic that maybe didn't have access to the internet, or they didn't have a strong internet connection for them to be able to continue their education. What is going to happen going into the fall when schools reopen? But we know some people maybe still aren't comfortable with going back into the classroom because a lot of kids can't get vaccinated.
True. And I've been in contact with some of our local school districts trying to see what their plan was. From my understanding, you will have to physically opt out if you do not want to go in person. So I think that will kind of change the dynamics, because last year you had to physically opt in if you wanted to go, and they still didn't let you. So I think the numbers are going to change. It's my prayer that while we built something that is good, it's my prayer that we won't have to use it next year, because everybody will be back in school. But we will have the option open where if those that are not comfortable going back in person and they don't have the means to do it from home, we will still be open as a church to offer that service.
Pastor, with that, just another minute or two here with you on the show. Anything maybe you have coming up over the summer, or any other programs that you want to share?
Yeah, August is a huge month for Shiloh. We'll be celebrating 45 years of ministry. So we'll that first Sunday in August, we're going to have an outside service. We'll probably have like light refreshments, like a picnic almost. Everything will be outside. It'll still be socially distanced, but you can come by, wave, say hi, grab a hot dog, and just join us. We're trying to show the community that we're not a coven, that you're free to join us. So we're trying to be as visual as possible. Like I said, we're trying to pay off our mortgage so that we can do bigger things for the city, for our community. I'm a firm believer in helping wherever we are. It makes no sense in Pontiac for there to be a church on every corner and for there to be a problem on every street. I just feel like we should take care of where we are.
Are you hopeful?
I am very hopeful. I'm an optimist at heart. I believe that God will make a way out of no way. I believe that he's still hearing and answering prayers. He's still kicking down doors and pouring out blessings out of windows. I just feel that whatever we're in, God already saw it and he already has the answer. It's just up to us to keep pushing forward.
Well, with that, Pastor, for those that maybe want to find out more about your church, how can they do so? Do you have a website? I know you're on Facebook.
I'm on Facebook under Shiloh Baptist Church. You can call the church. Unfortunately, as busy as we should have been with our website, funding was down, so we did not have a website put up, and it's currently being developed now by one of our younger members. But like I said, right now you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. If you want to find me, you can find me on Facebook. I'm readily available. Whatever you need. As far as community goes, if you need help, let me know. We just want to be in this thing together.
Well, with that, I think you need a TikTok page.
Now I do have one. my daughters make fun of me, but I do have one.
Do you do the dances?
No dances. I do a little lip syncing every now and then, but no dancing.
But that's how you reach the younger demographic. That and Snapchat.
It is.
Well, I'm sure that, you have fun with it, and we're lucky to have you here in the city of Pontiac. I know it's been a trying time for you, and I hope that you're doing okay as well, because you lifted up the entire community of Pontiac throughout this past year. So we wish you the best of luck, and thank you again for your time.
I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Pastor Gracey with the Shiloh Baptist Church in the city of Pontiac. Please help the community, because we are all in this together. We'll take a quick break here on the Megacast. On the back side, we are going to be talking with Buddy's Pizza. That's next here on the Megacast.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Trevor Project is sharing how you can support LGBTQ youth who may be at risk.
It's simple. Just show them that you care. C-A-R-E. Connect. If you noticed any warning signs of suicide from someone you know, reach out to them.
Ask. Ask directly, are you thinking about killing yourself? It might be challenging, but talking about suicide is proven to reduce risk.
Respond. If they open up to you about their suicidal ideation, honor that trust by responding with compassion and empathy.
Empower. Talking openly is a great first step, but now you can empower them with the information and the support they need to improve their situation.
Learn more about how you can show them you care and help prevent LGBTQ youth suicide. Visit trvr.org/care.
Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday to be with us on the Megacast. As a reminder, you can always catch previous episodes. Just go to civiccentertv.com, click on Megacast, or if you just want to watch the individual interviews, you can do so by finding them on the on-demand section. If there's one thing that makes everything better, Tyler, it's pizza.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It solves a lot of people's problems.
What type of pizza do you like?
I'm more just like a plain pepperoni. I'm pretty traditional. Straight up go for it.
My husband, he grew up in New York, so he always wants the New York style pizza.
All right.
I'm like,
That's fine.
There's nothing better than Buddy's pizza. And for some reason, too, I believe it tastes better when it comes from the original Buddy's.
Of course.
Over in Detroit at 6 Mile and Conant. But what's it like to have to come up with the branding for the iconic pizza chain? Let's bring in Wes Pikula. Is that how do you pronounce your last name, Wes?
It's Wes Pikula. That's fine.
Oh, Pikula. Chief Brand Officer over at Buddy's Pizza. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me and having Buddies on air, I guess.
Oh my gosh. How much pizza do you eat in a year?
Well, let's put it this way. I've been here going on 47 years, so I probably eat a pie a day. So somebody has to do the math.
Well, once you get past so many, the calories don't count any longer.
Yeah, but there's ways, you can order like cheese. There's all kind of different ways to skin a cat, as they say.
So how long did you say you've been with Buddies?
Going on 47 years. Actually, just had in April, it's been 47 years.
47 years. What's it been like for you? I would imagine you've held a lot of different jobs throughout that time.
I have, and I started at the original Buddies at 6 and Conan, as you mentioned earlier. I was 15 when I started. My first job was a dishwasher, and I moved up the ranks as time went on. And I've had positions as unit manager and chief operating officer. And so now I'm in sort of my twilight. So I'm the chief brand officer. But one thing I can talk about is Buddies and pizza. So
for those that maybe don't know the history behind Buddies Pizza and what makes it so special, can you share that with us?
Sure. So there was a house on 6 Mount Kona in Detroit, as they refer to it as the East Side. And at some point in the 20s, maybe early 30s, it was a little bar. There's rumors that it was a speakeasy or a blind pig, as they referred to as back then during Prohibition. And sometime in probably 45, 46, a gentleman by the name of Gus Guerrera had purchased the building. And, back then, had a lot of veterans that spent time in Italy, all meandering through those neighborhoods. It was kind of an ethnic area, Polish, German, Italian. They would come into the bar and talk about this great thing they ate in Italy, blah, blah, blah. And obviously they're talking about pizza. And so Gus, being of Italian origins, it sparked an idea. And so at the time, he was used to the Sicilian style, which was more rectangular version, that I think his mom was familiar with. So back then, I don't think there were too many square pizza pans available. So in pursuit of finding something he could bake this sort of rectangular pizza, somebody in the bar or at the restaurant coming in at the time, was a really small place, said, "Hey, we've got these things at the shop that maybe it'll work." And what they wound up being is these little drip trays, or trays that kind of were scrap metal collectors. They were like 8 by 10 inches and 10 by 14 inches. They brought some in, and as folklore has it, he put some dough in there and he put it into this I don't know, drip pan, and wow, an amazing bake came out of this thing. So the whole streets back then were lined with tool and die shops and automotive little suppliers. And so that's where it started. It started, they had the 2 size pans, the 8 by 10 and 10 by 14, which is ironic because that's how that, and to this day, that's all we serve. And, the bake was amazing and the pizza started. So the other part that's interesting is that the pizza is actually different because it was assembled differently. Traditional pizzas have dough, sauce, cheese. Well, the Buddies pizza, now referred to as Detroit style, is actually dough, pepperoni, cheese, and then with a layer of sauce on top. So it's the square shape, it's baked in the industrial pans, and of course it uses brick cheese, which is a little different in the industry. Everyone uses mozzarella or some blend. Buddy still uses the Wisconsin brick cheese. And of course that bake in those corners kind of sets it apart from everybody else.
And it always tastes better the second day. As well. It is so good. But it also, to think back to how it started, but it has really started a pizza revolution And now it's like you said, it's referred to as Detroit style.
It's referred to as Detroit style. And I think when Pizza Hut brought it into or put it on their menu, 5,000 plus stores, it kind of gave it additional validation that it's a viable product. Of course, Chicago and California and different regions always had their pizza. St. Louis has their pizza. So I think for us, for Buddy's, and me personally growing up in Detroit and living next to the Buddy's location, very close to it, it's really an honor to have something like this represent the city. The city, as everyone knows, has gone through a lot, and we're so proud to be Detroiters and to actually have something coming out of Detroit, right? You have Cars, you have Motown, Verner's, of course, Sanders, but to have Stroh's, of course, but you have Buddy's now as part of that mix, coming out of the city, out of very sort of humble beginnings there, and we're very proud. 75 years, that's our anniversary this year. We're able to, people can order the pizzas now through Gold Valley online. So we have frozen pizzas, and it's a national thing. So people can go online and have it shipped anywhere in the country. And so that's exciting too.
So it's just like times change, you have to evolve around the times as well. Wes Pikula with us here on the Megacast. He's the Chief Brand Officer for Buddy's Pizza. And Wes, can I ask you, are you experiencing the same problem as so many other restaurants right now and trying to find enough employees?
Yes, we really are. I mean, I think our industry in general, it's Buddy's, but it's food service. When I started in food service, it was just an amazing time there, the camaraderie and just the hustle and bustle. And there's still a lot of that here. I think what happened is COVID really redirected a lot of people, redirected resources, and it's somewhat frustrating. But we do everything just like other restaurant groups do. We have sign-on bonuses. We have a great work environment. Our culture is second to none. Buddy's does ridiculous amount of work for the communities that it operates in. And we try to maintain a very sort of opportunity zone, I guess, at Buddy's, where employees can come in, like myself, started, as a dishwasher, probably making, $1.50 an hour, whatever it was back then, which seemed like a lot of money when you don't have a job other than a paper route. But, now you can come to Buddy's with, have 19 stores. We just opened Troy. I mean, you can have opportunities to get into management and learn life skills and work with some amazing people. So it's about, trying to recruit with wages, trying to do sign-on bonuses. We have a Refer a Buddy program where you can refer people to come to Buddy's. But the bottom line is you got to think also about retaining your employees and making sure that the employees that are working for you, that show up every day, get the recognition and get the support that they need. So it's not always, yes, we're trying to hire employees, but let's also make sure that the employees that work here are treated with respect.
I love that you said that. And with that, give Janice over at 6 Mile in Conant a shout out. She's by far the best.
We love Janice.
She's the best bartender ever.
She's a warrior.
She is. She is so fabulous. So if you're over there, tell her we said hi. Right?
No, I will. And I think that speaks to Buddy's, not only the pizza, but to the people. I always equate those two because you can't have the pizza without the people and vice versa. So,
but at the same time, you guys are still expanding. I think, wasn't there a new one that opened too long ago?
Yeah, we opened in Troy. And of course, Troy is an area that we've always looked at. It's part of the Buddy's, I say community, because we have stores surrounding it. It seats about 200. It's a cool little place. We put a lot of elements in there from Buddy's, bocce balls, the rendezvous sign, like we made light fixtures out of oil filters, and done a few things. Obviously Motown is a big part of the city. Buddy's historically has always delivered pizzas backstage in the 70s and the 80s to many Motown acts, and even in the 60s. I mean, it wasn't unusual to get a call from Ford Auditorium to deliver pizzas backstage to Diana Ross or to Olympia Stadium when they had the Motown Review there. We quite often were called upon to make that delivery late at night. So no, we're expanding. We're going to be opening up more locations, and again, that's why it's a great opportunity for people that want to be in food service business. I mean, I think it's a great business. The life skills you learn in the restaurant industry are second to none. and it's still a lot of fun, and you get to eat Buddy's pizza every day, so that can't be all bad, right?
Right, exactly. My favorite, though, is the salad, the antipasta salad. That's so good. And I know that you guys do the Buddy Bones
We
as
do the
well
Buddy
for the
Bones.
dogs.
We halted a little bit for COVID, but the dressing again, same historical, made in gallons, marinated for 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, it's just stuff that you can only get at Buddy's. And of course, everyone always touts 6 Mile because that's where it all began. So if you're talking about a 75th anniversary, you got to talk about 6 Mile. And we always say the pizza's better there because of the water, which I don't know if that's true or not. But those are all the rumors. I'm just passing on rumors.
That's okay.
I'm at Farmington today, and I think the pizza's pretty good here. So
I will say I'm like you. Because if we order or take home, then we'll get it from the local one. But if you're going out, we used to go every Thursday night at that corner booth at 6 Mile and Conant. It was our booth, and if someone was in there, we were kicking them out.
Down 4 and 5. I remember I bust many a tables there into the late hours when we used to be open at 1:30 in the morning in the 70s.
So with that too, Wes, can I ask you, you just mentioned about so many famous people. Who have you met through Buddy's?
Well, we had Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook came in a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, I was there that night, and I tried to get in back there to get an interview with him, and you guys stopped me.
No, but that was probably, we delivered, the Paul McCartney. I mean, through the years, there's just been so many. I mean, every baseball team that came into town that played always visited Buddy's after the games. I mean, I can't even imagine all the different people that walked through Buddy's. I mean, it was just normal. People would come in. We wouldn't even think twice about it. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to California, but if a star comes around, no one even pays attention. And at 6 Mile, it kind of got that way because every night there was somebody there. I did wait on Leon Spinks one time when he lost his teeth. I don't know if that's a celebrity, but I don't know if you remember that story, but it was pretty interesting. He came in with a full-length fur coat, and I was just started as a bartender, and I couldn't understand what he was ordering, and I was getting scared by the minute. So another bartender had to come in because I couldn't understand him because he didn't have his teeth. And then in the paper it said that he had lost his teeth somewhere. It was pretty wild. But 6 Mile was very colorful, and the characters that came in there obviously were colorful. So, and we still have them. So it's not like it ended. I think you still go into 6 Mile and see the cast of characters, as I call them.
That's a good way to describe it. With that, too, you just mentioned 75 years in business. Are you going to continue to expand, or do you guys come together after COVID and the pandemic and say, let's realign, or are you doing okay?
No, we're doing great. And I think also we are going to expand. I think with Buddy's, it's such a treasure. And there's so many people through the years and through the history of Buddy's, and you mentioned Janice at 6 Mile. They've added so much to this company that it would be a shame not to put it on a runway and let it take off. I mean, we talk about the pizza, but Buddy's has more than just pizza. It's community outreach. It's working within the restaurants with staff. It's just being part of everyone's life from the time they're little coming in and parents are giving them breadsticks till they have their kids and their graduations. We've fed generations, and we're proud of the city, and we're proud to take something that developed in the city, was born in the city, and let the rest of the country take a run at it. We're going to keep going, and we're excited to do it.
Well, Wes, it's been so great having you with us today. We so appreciate it, and congratulations on 75 years.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us and tell the Buddy story. We appreciate it.
I love it. I love the history of the place as well. Again, Buddy's Pizza, the original 6 Mile in Conant on Detroit's east side. But of course you can find them all throughout the area. We have probably the closest for us right here is Northwestern Highway.
Yeah, it's the Farmington location, I'd say.
So still not quite the same. No. 6 Mile. That's where you need to go. Hey, we're going to take a break here on the Megacast. Just about 20 minutes left in the show. And when we come back, we'll be joined with the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections. Check in to see how things are going at our state's prisons. That's next here on the Megacast.
To Sofía and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior.
These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance.
They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Thank you for being with us on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. Just about 20 minutes left here in the show. And while most of the restrictions have been lifted here in the state of Michigan, our prisons, not so much. They are still under a lot of regulations. And to kind of break everything down and give us an update, we want to bring in Chris Gouts. He's the spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections. Great to have you back with us, Chris. How are you?
Good, Ronnie. Thanks for having me. Always good to be back.
So this has been such a roller coaster ride, not only for the public, but for our prisoners, but the staff as well, working behind the bars. Because when we're being told to socially distance, not so easy to do inside a prison.
No, that's true. And, we continue to follow CDC guidelines, and those have not changed for carceral settings, which means that while our staff, may be going out to Comerica Park and being around 10,000 people with no masks on, they can go to concerts, they can go to the grocery store with no mask on. When they come to work, they still have to wear them. The prisoners have to wear them as well. So, we're going to continue to follow that guidance. Other states have gone in a different direction, but for the health and safety of not only our prisoners, but our staff and the community around them that they interact with, we're going to continue to follow those guidelines, and staff and prisoners are still going to be wearing masks and practicing social distancing until that guidance changes and we're given a different direction.
It's so how are the numbers right now, the COVID numbers?
They're actually amazing compared to where we've been. Back in the last fall when the state was going through its second wave, we had, in some cases, sometimes thousands of prisoners at a time who were positive. Right now we have 12. Last week there were only, I think, 6 we got down to. So the numbers are incredibly low, and that's really in great part to the fact that 62% of our prisoners are fully vaccinated. And we're continuing every day to promote that. And we're getting more and more prisoners to sign up. And I think people are starting to understand, especially, with the British and the Delta variants, that it's not a matter of if, but when. And so if you're not vaccinated, there's a high likelihood that you're going to get sick. And we don't want to see that. And so we want as many people as possible, our staff included, to become vaccinated.
So with that, Chris, we have seen recently Henry Ford Health Hospital announced that all of its staff members are going to have to be vaccinated. Is that something that is being considered in the prisons with your staff at least?
Not at this time. There's really a lot of rules. It's not just something that our department can do. Obviously, we're a part of the state, and so There's the Office of State Employer, there's civil service rules. So there's a lot of other externalities and pieces that go into before a department on its own can just mandate certain things. But that Henry Ford piece is actually going to impact us because in Jackson and other places where we interact a lot with Henry Ford Health Systems, in Jackson, we have a secure unit for prisoners who need to have significant medical treatment. And so we have an entire wing of a floor where our staff are going. And so any of our officers who are there to provide custody and security for those staff, they're going to have to show that they've been vaccinated. If not, they're not going to be able to have those assignments. So there's a lot of our staff that are now we're going to have to go look at their vaccination status. And so that's becoming an issue that we've been dealing with and just had some meetings on recently. So any of our staff, starting, I believe it's September 10th is when it kicks in, then they'll have to be fully vaccinated as well.
Wow, there are so many facets to this pandemic, and we've heard the word over and over and over again throughout the crisis, pivot. Are you ready to breathe a little bit now? Because I feel like, people in your position, but the prisons as well, you've been hit hardest.
We have, and when you said pivot, I was just flashing back to the Friends scene where they're moving the couch up the stairwell.
Right.
That's always going to be ingrained in my head. But no, it has been a very difficult time, and our staff have just done an amazing job to try to deal with this. It's been very hard on them. It's been very hard on their families. Worrying about bringing it home, worrying about bringing it in. That there's a lot of our staff care about providing care and custody for the prisoners. They don't want to see anyone get sick. We certainly don't want anyone to get sick, and so it's been very trying. It caused a lot of our staff to have to go off because they've been sick or they were exposed, which then leads to mandated overtime and stress on those staff that have to stay longer. They're not able to pick up their kids from school like they were planning to. They're not able to take them to the games or whatever they were going to do. So that causes stress on the family. And so that's why we have this really important wellness unit that's there to provide anonymous mental health care for our staff as well as their families and retirees, because we recognize that's sometimes as big of a burden as just not being there because they have to be at work. And so there's a lot of strain and stress that this has added certainly to our employees over the last 16, 18 months.
So many of these things that the general population, we just don't really think about. And I know law enforcement in general is struggling right now to try to get enough employees. Is that the case for the prison system as well?
Yeah, it's really not. It's that, and it's also just nationwide. We hear from our other 49 states as well as Puerto Rico and some of the other large municipal county jails. Cook County and Illinois and out in LA that run really big systems. Everyone is struggling to find corrections officers, and so right now we have about 600 or so openings for corrections officers around the state. We employ more than 5,000, so it gives you kind of a sense of what we're looking at. And in some cases, there are maybe 3 or 4 vacancies at prisons. Some cases there may be 40 or 50, and so depending on where you're at, that obviously has a big factor on that. So we run quarterly academies. So every 3 months, we're trying to bring in about 200 new officers every 3 months, and so that's what we're budgeted for. Sometimes we hit that goal, sometimes we don't. And so if people are interested, they can certainly go to our website. They can see what the qualifications are, what the training is involved, the starting pay. Obviously, officers incredibly competitive benefits, and it's a great job. It's a job, one, that you can help provide safety to your community, but also you can help change lives. You can be a role model. You can help run programs. You can do all sorts of things and be a real change maker for individuals who have had a really rough go of it and have traumatic experiences and had difficulties that have sent them to prison. And so it's a really rewarding career and one that we hope people will certainly want to join.
So are you allowing in-person visitation right now?
We are. We have been for the last a few months or so. Prior to that, we offered video visitation, which is something that we hadn't done in the past, but we have that technology up and running at all but I think 1 or 2 of our prisons now have full video visitation. And for those prisons who aren't experiencing an outbreak or having large numbers, which again, because we only have 12 in the whole state, I don't think there's really anyone that's on restrictions right now. They are able to have in-person visits. It looks a little different. They have to schedule it. They come in 2-hour blocks. They schedule it online. Then they come for their 2 hours. They have a rapid test that's done in the parking lot beforehand. so we can see, we make sure that they're not positive before they come in. Then when they come in, they can have a quick hug or kiss at the start of their visit, and then they sit in between plexiglass dividers in the visiting room, and then they can have another quick hug or kiss at the end, and then they leave. Whereas before, it was in person the whole time. You could hold hands the whole time. You could be there for hours and hours, as long as there weren't people waiting. So it is in person. It looks a little different, but by and large, the loved ones and the prisoners are just very grateful and happy to be able to have that connection, be able to see their loved ones, within a few feet of them.
So how long do you anticipate those new procedures being in place?
For the foreseeable future, again, we're going to follow the guidance of the CDC and what our state health department says. We want to make sure that we're in line and in concert with what they're recommending be done, and also listening to what other states are doing as well. And so, again, some states are further ahead, some states are farther behind. We're just going to continue to follow what the experts say and do what we feel is the safest for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to know because it continues to change. And while for so many of us, life is starting to resume, we're not out of the pandemic just yet. And we do have the variants out there that are still a huge concern for the health officials. And Chris, if I can ask you, I saw this headline, and I think so many people, they think it's unbelievable where some of our prisoners are receiving their stimulus checks. How does that, I mean, I know that's the federal government, it's not the state government, but you look at this and you're like, how is that possible? This is money for people because, businesses have been shut down, you haven't been able to work. I'm sorry, but you're sitting behind bars.
Well, that would be a good question for Congress. The first stimulus bill that the Republicans wrote last year and it was signed by President Trump allowed for everyone. They were just trying to get money out the door, understandably, because we were in the midst of a pandemic, and so they signed the bill. And then the IRS said, hold up, we don't want prisoners to get this money. And so the IRS directed us and the other 49 states to not give those checks to prisoners because I think after they signed it, they realized, whoa, that's not going to look good, or we don't like that. But then there was a class action lawsuit that was started out in California. And then when they read the letter of the law, literally there was no ability for the government to withhold the money from prisoners. And so the IRS ultimately decided last October that they had to give the money out. And then there was a subsequent stimulus bill, again signed by the Republicans and signed by President Trump, that did not change that. So it again allowed for prisoners to get the money. And then in this third installment, signed by that was passed by the Democrats in the Congress, and then signed by President Biden, continued that what was done under President Trump, which allowed the prisoners to get this money. And so about $22.6 million total so far has been put in prisoner accounts, although we have been able to claw some of that back to pay child support, court restitution, or restitution and other court fees and things like that that the prisoners owed and likely would have never been able to afford to pay back without some of this money.
So, but is there also a concern? And, because they're talking about now, what about the, child tax credits? Could some of the prisoners be getting that money, the extra $300 or $400 a month?
It's really going to be individualized. I don't know that there was a difference in the way that was set up compared to the others. And it's really going to depend on whether or not they're still listed and how they file their taxes. Likely, if they have a spouse on the outside, likely the money would go there, but it certainly is possible, even if they didn't get the money themselves, if a spouse on the outside did, if they got the money, they could certainly, nothing would preclude them from sending that money and wiring it to that prisoner as well. So whether they're getting it or not, they still would potentially have access to that. But, a lot of the younger prisoners who may have children, that's certainly a possibility. But again, it just depends on how they set up their taxes and what their family structure is like. And certainly if their family was the victim of their crime, most likely the family on the outside has been able to sever that relationship so that they wouldn't be able to get those funds.
And so with that, has this caused any problems inside the prison walls, because while we know prisoners often, they have accounts, family members can put money into those accounts so they can, get, extra food or toiletries, things of that nature. But we do also know there's an underground, a black market per se, within the prison walls. If anything, we know people with cell phones in prison. So is there a concern that some of this extra money floating around could, lead to an increase in violence over, the sale of drugs or weapons or things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of our biggest concerns when we realized that when the IRS told us that we actually had to release the funds and the prisoners could get it. Our staff, we all felt the same way, that there was a big concern when you have that large of an influx of cash into a system that really doesn't need that level of funding. Because when you think about it, when you're in prison, if you're on the outside, your mortgage is paid for because your housing is covered. There's no need to buy clothing. Your food is provided. Your healthcare is provided. There's no insurance, cars, anything like that. So really, at the end of the day, what prisoners spend money on is calling home, writing letters if they're going to use stamps, both either electronically or snail mail, and then if they want to buy extra food items or extra toiletries, things like that. So there's really not a whole lot that they need that money for. And so our concern certainly has been is that if they have thousands of dollars sitting in their account, they may be tempted to try to pay someone on the outside to bring drugs into them or cell phones or whatever it may be. And certainly we battle that every day. Pre-COVID, we certainly did. But when you have all that extra money, there's certainly a much greater temptation and ability, frankly, to do that. And so our intel unit has been working overtime, listening to calls, reading through emails, reading through letters, trying to find instances of this and then root them out and going out and searching cells, searching prisoners, and finding contraband that certainly they shouldn't have. And it could be a danger if left unchecked.
I think one of the interesting things about this is we do know there are some people that haven't really received any COVID-19 money and what it was designed for. So yes, there's a loophole here, but we have people, serving life sentences. So, because I know some of the argument has been too, well, this money can be used for the prisoners that are going to be released to help set them up so that they can, look for a job and this, that, and the other. If you're sitting there in serving a life sentence, why are we sending you tax dollars?
Well, again, it wouldn't be a question for us, but it would certainly be a question for Congress because we don't have any say. We're just simply the conduit. But I certainly get your point, and I think a lot of our staff would agree with that sentiment. But we also do know, while certainly there is a criminal element that certainly can, and we've seen at use here, we do hear anecdotally, though, of other times where prisoners will send that money home because maybe they feel bad that because of their poor choices, they're not able to provide for their family. And so they may say, I can't use this money. I'll keep some of it, but I'm going to send some of it home so that, my child or my grandchild or spouse may be able to do something positive with it on the outside. Now, is that happening in every instance? No. But we certainly know that does happen. But certainly we're have to be much more concerned about what the potential negative consequences are of having that level of money sloshing around the system.
Yeah, I guess we don't think about it, but just because you're behind bars doesn't mean that people don't file their taxes, right?
Right. Yeah. Certainly. And certainly we do have some prisoners who come to prison with great financial stability and wealth. They may have had, maybe they had a pension from one of the big three, or maybe they had a stock portfolio or something else that was providing them income. So certainly we see that, and certainly they're filing their taxes, and they would have that ability.
See, all these little things that we don't think about. Chris Gout's with us again, spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections. But I know for so many of the prisoners, it probably means the world to them to be able to see their loved ones in person again, even if it is for that short time of 2 hours. So with that, Chris, anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to share before we say goodbye?
I think you covered it. I would just, note, as we talked about how we only have 12 positive cases right now, which is a huge thing. And just a few days ago, we passed the 1 millionth test that we've done of our prisoners. So we've done just north of 1 million tests and found 26,000 positive. So I'm not going to be able to do the math for you, but it's a pretty low percentage. but it shows you the amount of testing that we've done, and which is light years above any other state in the country. Even states that have 2 or 3 times the amount of prisoners that we have, we're light years ahead of how many we've had vaccinated. For many states, some states are still debating whether or not to provide vaccines to prisoners. So Michigan's in a really good spot, and I think taxpayers and your viewers should be proud of the work that's being done here to keep not only the prisoners and the staff safe, but also the communities to which our staff and the prisoners eventually come back to.
Well, we so appreciate your time, but also extend our gratitude to the entire staff there at the prison system, because we know it's been such a trying year and a half for all of you. Again, Chris Gouts with us, spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Corrections. That's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Megacast. We'll be back here bright and early Thursday, 10 a.m.